Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Kaba Ilco number HB185-2 NH. This is a hook bolt, is what it is. A hook bolt with a 31/32 of an inch backset. Let's go over this lock. So in the box will be the installation instructions. They are linked to down below this video so that you can review them independently or with this video as we go along through it. You get a couple of mounting screws, and we'll let's take a closer look at that. You get a couple of mounting screws. I see only one. Let me find the missing one. Okay, we're in good shape. There were two in that box, so we're in good shape. What you're going to do, and then of course the business end of the part number, the lock body itself. There it is. Typical storefront hardware in the terms of its footprint. This is a hook bolt. Hook bolts are used in scenarios where occasionally people will install these in sliding doors, but they're really not meant for sliding doors. Even though they would certainly keep a door from sliding open, they wouldn't keep a door from sliding partially. Where they're really used to great effect is to help eliminate the possibility of spreading occurring on the door and frame. So a standard dead bolt is just, their standard is about 1.5 inch projection. They have a short version of that that's about 1 inch projection, and it's just nothing other than solid. This would be a short throw version if this was not notched out at all like that. The dead bolt would be about 1.5 inch again, just solid bolt. Solid bolts are really great for swinging doors. Hook bolts are great for sliding doors, but you don't really have sliding aluminum storefront. But where they're good for is preventing spreading, is where a hook bolt's best and most effective. A spreading attack, spreading is a bypass method used by people to get into a space. So, you know, that's just 1 inch projection. If I had a 3-foot door and frame, I could take a 2x4 cut to 37 and change, put that in the frame, and then rubber mallet it down. I'm going to bow the frame, and I'm going to push that door open is all I'm going to do. It is a common bypass method. It's a common method in residential construction attacks because residential construction is usually not exceptional in terms of it being intended to maintain such tight integrity that you can work millions of cycles out of a door and frame. It's just a wood frame that has some studs behind it. Pretty easy to spread all that open. Aluminum storefront, not so easy, but a hook bolt exists to help defeat that method of bypass. And you'll want to be mindful of that. People will install hook bolts because they've literally been installed. People install hook bolts because they have literally been broken into, where there was little evidence of how that happened. They know somebody got in, the bolt is still locked, maybe a little mark on the frame, but that's it. So you're going to want to be mindful of that sort of attack. Use a hook bolt when it makes perfect sense. Why can't you spread a hook bolt? Well, because of the placement of the strike prep in the inactive door or in the frame is going to be based on it residing down in this area, and we'll go over that in a moment. So there is a document below this video called Cut Sheet, and let's dive into it. Page 1 of the cut sheet shows the 4 different variants of this lock. The 185 is the standard deadbolt. The 185 ST is the standard deadbolt with just the short throw. Where you would use the shorter throw is when you have a condition on the jamb that you don't have enough room to throw that 1.5 inch bolt all the way out. You could literally have a 1 inch profile on the frame, and you need a short deadbolt to make that sort of thing work. That's where you'll use it. Then you've got the HB185, that's this one right here, but then you've got the HB185 SN, same lock, except that it is an ANSI standard, meaning it will fit into a government 86. 86 is the number. That refers to a preparation of the lock in the door itself. So if the door is prepped for with an 86 edge, it will take a door, pardon me, it will take any lock that's built to fit into an 86 edge prep, such as the HB185 SN. That'll have an 8-inch tall plate and will fit into that mortise cavity really well. Now, why would you need a larger format of this lock? Well, you might be installing it on a hollow metal door. You can. Why wouldn't you? I don't see a reason not to. I see reasons to install it on a hollow metal door because you will get a very secure method with that hook bolt of engaging the frame, even though your frame's going to need a special prep. But you can do that in such a way where the lock is inexpensive. It fits into a door prep that has no preparations on the outside. So if you're doing some sort of lock preparation where you want nothing on the outside, not even a cylinder, and you have some method of egress, like maybe a paddle or a lever you can immediately exit from, probably not going to meet any of your exit codes, so be mindful of that, or certainly won't meet your fire rating code. But it can be used in certain instances, and is used in certain instances where cost, effectiveness, elegance of the installation is all required, and you can make that elegant because it's completely concealed in the pocket of that door frame. So 4 different versions on that, 4 different types of the lock. Now in each one of those there are 3 back sets, 31 32nds, 1.125", and then 1.5". Now the back set on these locks is an important aspect to consider when you are either measuring an existing lock or you are drilling a new installation altogether. You do have to know what your back set is or is going to be, and you've got 3 different types of door prep that you can deal with. You've got square edge doors, beveled edge doors, radius edge doors. All of those are very common to aluminum storefront. You're not going to see radius edge in hollow metal, even though it does exist. That's a pretty rare bird to see that. But an aluminum storefront, you'll have all 3 of those preparations. The back set is the definition from the edge of the door to the center of the hole for the lock. Not a big deal if you've got a square edge door, because you can measure that from either side of the door and it's going to give you the same dimension. However, it's not the case when you have a beveled edge door or a radius edge door. No problem on a square edge door. But when you measure the edge of the door to the center of the hole, that dimension is going to be different than when you're measuring it here to here. Okay, so how do you know what to do? Well, luckily the definition of backset tells us that the definition of backset is actually the center of the door to the center of the cylinder preparation. So what that means is I don't care if it's square, beveled, or radius edge, because I'm taking my dimension from the center of the door. What's important about that is that what do all door edge profiles have in common? Well, they all have a center. Okay. What do different thicknesses of doors all have in common? Well, they have a center. So when you define it as the center in the thickness of the door, you're in good shape. Now, it's really helpful to kind of know what that differential would be on a beveled edge door from one side to the other. Well, that's defined. That's defined as the following: 1/8 in 2. 1/8 inch for every 2 inches of door thickness. So you can tell that the edge of the door on the small side, which would be the push side of the door, you can compensate for that dimension compared to the opposite side by you understanding that an 1 3/4 thick door is going to be just ever so slightly different, just ever so slightly less than an eighth of an inch. Okay, and you can calculate that difference and then accommodate where you locate the hole for the back set accordingly. Doing a radius edge door, just use a square edge is what you're going to do. Square edge it right off the face of the door to the outside of the radius. I don't know what the radius is on that. My guess would be 1.5 inches, something in that range, and it's probably fairly accurate. But doesn't really matter. Square edge to the center of the hole. If you're going to be drilling this hole for the cylinder, make sure that you get that right dimension. If you were to measure from the beveled edge on the small side and the beveled edge on the big side, you drill those holes, yep, they don't line up. So be mindful of that. Use a center punch, drill straight, make sure you've got it correct the first time, and then you'll have no problem, because the location of that, or the location of the hole does not permit in aluminum storefront a lot of room around where you drill the hole. The cylinder requires 1 1/4 inch diameter hole, but if you're off 1/8 of an inch, there's not much of a way to combat that. If you're going to be off 3/32 on this side and off 3/32 on this side, okay, now you're 3/16 off with that, with how those are set like that. Now that same sort of logic applies if it's a set of cylinders back to back, or if it's a peephole, especially a door viewer. Door viewers have very little margin around the inside part of that you look through, so you've got to drill that straight. Well, you got to drill it in line. If you measure incorrectly from both sides, we'd have somebody walk into the counter and say, yeah, I need a couple of scar plates. Why is that? Well, I'm 3/16 off and my trim doesn't cover it. So yeah, be mindful of that. Okay, now the page 1 of the cut sheet shows some dimensional properties of what a typical deadbolt installation would look like. Getting to page 2 shows more dimensional properties. Let's throw the tape measure on the hook bolt. It's going to have an overall body height of 6 and 13/16 or thereabouts. Overall width of the body, it's about 1 inch. Overall depth of the body, about 1.5 inches. Projection of the bolt itself overall, it's about 15/16. Okay. Height of the lip of the body, it's about 1.25 inches. Okay. Now page 2 is where you can build your part number. We talked about the 4 models, so that's going to be the A section of your part number. This is obviously an HB Hookbolt 185. Step B is going to be defining the faceplate that you need. This client did not need a faceplate, so there's literally nothing in the B section of the part number. It goes from A section straight to the C section, which are 3 options, 2, 3, and 4, 3 back sets. So define that. This is defined as a 2, which means a 31/32. Then your D section, the handing. This is an NH, non-handed. NH. That would be okay if you're dealing with 3 options: no faceplate, flat faceplate, radiused faceplate. But if you need a faceplate and it's either a beveled or a radiused with a weather strip, you have to define the hand. Define the hand, because the factory's not going to process the order without the part number being accurate. And they're not going to call and say, hey, what's going on with your part number? They'll wait for us to call them 2 weeks later. Radiused with weather strip have the weather stripping on the exterior of the opening. So whether it's left hand or right hand, or in this case probably left hand reverse or right hand reverse, you need to have that weather strip on the proper side. If it's a beveled plate, you can certainly understand how this bevel and this bevel are different. They're not symmetrical. You can't flip them over because nothing is symmetrical on the edge of this lock. Then you need the finish. You don't need the finish for this lock when there's no faceplate, but you will if there's a faceplate. And then if you see the letters IP anywhere, that just means individually packaged. Nothing to be concerned of whatsoever when you're ordering your lock. Now let's move to the installation instructions. And that's a 1-page endeavor, even though it is actually 2 pages. Page 2 is just it's a 2-page. Page 2 is just in a different language. When you're looking at how to prep the door, you're going to look at the bottom half of page 1 for your hook bolt dimensions. But everything you need is on the top of page 1. And you do have to be really mindful of the preparation. It's not only important to have it installed in the right location, it's important to have it installed in the right location, because the location of the prep for the hook bolt is really important to get that correct, is the bottom line. And you can certainly tell just by looking at the bolt, yeah, if I want this to be effective, I've got to locate that preparation accurately and do so in such a way that when my bolt articulates, it's going to actually, fall into the slot that you create in the frame, okay? And by the way, you see how that pin there comes down? When this lock gets into the unlocked position, okay, you really can't lift it up, but certainly watch that pin. As it comes into the locked position, it's going to seat up, and at that point, there's no way to drive that down. The only way to drive that down is to force that to such a point where you are literally sharing that pin, that steel pin that's there, and the steel housing that it's around. Well, these locks are not broken into that way. That's the bottom line. Speaking of breaking in, you hear that rattle. Okay. There's nothing loose on this lock. Nothing at all, in fact. I first saw this lock and I said, what is that sound? What is loose on there? I probed it. I used high magnification glasses. I used a magnet. I finally determined that the only thing that it could be is an anti-saw provision, because it really sounds like it sounds as if that noise is being emanated from the bolt. So, well, my suspicion was that these lamination plates had a hollowed area where there's literally a hardened steel ball inside of there. I contacted the head of technical support at Kaba Ilco, and he said, yep, that's an anti-saw ball bearing that's in there. A way to attack these is with a sawzall. That's how... So you get in there and you cut that through, but with that anti-saw provision, it ain't going to keep you necessarily from cutting it open, but it will certainly change the ease at which you're going to cut it open. Hardened steel pins, hardened steel bearings are used in cylinder construction, safe construction. Sometimes they're used pretty regularly in high security cylinders, and they'll always be used, or at least some variant of it used in UL 437 compliant lock sets. UL 437 is a standard that, when cylinders comply to it, have passed a substantial threshold of warding off attack, drilling, wrenching, slamming, all kinds of stuff. I don't have the UL 437 standard to read. I attempted to purchase it. The standard's $500, and I've not found a copy of it. But the criteria at which something is passed is an established criteria. So this lock has that provision. Now, why does Kaba Ilco do that? Well, I'm not aware of anybody else who has a hook bolt for aluminum storefront with that provision. So whose lock do you want to use? One with an anti-saw provision or one that doesn't? Sure, you're going to want the Kaba Ilco lock. Now, looking at the how to prep the door. You've got the height of the pocket, you've got the width of the pocket. That's all easily defined. You'll notice that the top of the prep to the center of the hole is also defined at 1.6 inch. You'll then notice that there's a B dimension from the center of the cylinder to the top of the strike prep. For the hook bolt is 2.19 inch. And you'll see how much substantially lower that preparation is than for a deadbolt. And that's because I'm going to bet that 2.9 minus 1.38 is exactly this dimension, right? And you'll need to locate it there. And you'll notice that the prep in the edge of the door or in the frame is kind of beaker shaped, where when you bring the door to the closed position and you throw the bolt, it's got a wider space in order for it to enter. Then as it lifts, it gets drawn into a tighter space, drawing the door and frame together, nice and tight against each other. And you'll certainly notice aluminum storefront preps that don't have that profile to the prep in the frame. They're usually just rectangles, but it's awfully nice when they're prepped the right way, because it will absolutely draw that door and frame in nice and tight together. No slop on the door and frame. So be mindful to get all those locations correct. It's aluminum, it's easy to drill through, it's easy to cut. It's just not easy to repair if it's wrong. The cylinder calls out the cam that's there. That is called a Adams Wright style cam, or an MS cam, maximum security. That's a trademark of Adams Wright. You need a cam that meets that criteria. If you order an Adams Wright cam by anyone, it's going to work. Adams Wright has, I know that there are 2 cams that work their entire line. The Adams Wright MS cam works almost all of it, but not everything Adams Wright. But for this, you're going to need the standard garden variety Adams Wright style cam. It's literally known as the Adams Wright cam. It's a number 2 cam by Kaba Ilco, so if you order your mortise cylinders from them, you want a 2 in the part number. 7185 SC2 could be a good part number. The dimensional properties are there. The bottom right-hand corner of the installation instructions defines this for us, which is nice. Without telling you what it is, it does show you what that backset is defined as. So make sure that you get that all super accurate. And that's really it. Why would you be installing a hook bolt? Well, you might just be replacing stuff, or you might be adding a lock to an installation. You could have a client that says, you know, I've got a dead latch, aluminum storefront. During work hours, we buzz people in. It's a pawn shop. It's a doctor's office. It could just be employee entrance where everybody has a code, a card to get in. But at night, you've recognized the possibility of break-in easily to bypass that scenario. You might call up someone like us or a locksmith and say, I want to be able to lock that door at night and know no one's getting in. Add another lock, because you are first in and you are last out, so you'll be able to control that. And adding a lock like this could be the great way to go about giving you the security of the opening that you require, and you will very often see multiple locks on doors for that exact reason. Okay. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Kaba Ilco products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog for their storefront hardware. And I would encourage you to take a look through that book. It's relatively inexpensive. It's incredibly inexpensive material that you're going to be able to use to great effect. Locksmiths buy this stuff. This stuff is going to a locksmith in California. You'll be able to use it to great effect. Now, having said that, on that manufacturer's page, there are also other catalogs, such as the key blank catalog. So if you know Kaba Ilco for anything, you very likely know them for key blanks. That's probably what most people think of Kaba Ilco for. I think of them for their mortise rim cylinders, their key and knob and lever, key, knob, lever, and deadbolt cylinders. And they do a really good job with all of that material. But that key blank catalog is an awfully indispensable resource, because you can look in there, let's just say at their door hardware section, you know, where you're going to find your Yales and your Corbins and your Russwins and your Corbin Russwins and Schlage, etc., etc. And you can use that if you're trying to identify a key blank, at least to a great extent, to at least identify it, or certainly identify what it's not. And that catalog's helpful for that reason. If you have any questions on the HB185 in a number 2 backset or any other Kaba Ilco product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.